Last week, I made a video talking about everything wrong with Havoc Demon Hunter's talent tree. So in this video, I'm going to go over how I think we should fix things and what new things could be added to the tree to give more gameplay options and just make Havoc Demon Hunter fun again. So again, if you missed last week's video, go check that out. But basically what we're doing here is we're going to talk about the issues Havoc has, but more so focus on how to improve them and fun things we can add to the talent tree to basically improve Demon Hunter and make it a bit more fun. Now again, I'm not a game dev. I could be way off base with these. Some of them might even be broken, but I think it's a fun little exercise just to get the brain juices flowing and talk about why or how we can make Havoc better than it currently is. Because to be fair, right now, it's pretty mid and it's pretty unfun for a lot of people. So before getting into the video though, I would like to say thank you so much everybody who likes the videos. Before you watch the video, on any creator you want to support, you want us to do well, scroll down in the comment section, drop the like, and then scroll back up before you watch the video. If you don't like the video, you can always unlike it later, but doing that is the best, most free way to help creators. If you also want to support me, you consider hitting the subscriber button, trying to hit 10K by the end of the year. Other than that, you can become a channel member, get access to a ton of cool exclusive perks like emotes, VOD review, exclusive Discord, and a bunch of other exclusive videos. And finally, go to the description, follow me on Twitch. My Discord's there too. I stream on Twitch, I hang out in Discord, everything pretty cool. So let's that out of the way, let's get into the video. So we're gonna split this in two parts. Second half is gonna be things from the past that we could bring back to add to the tree. First half is gonna be just more so looking at the tree itself and talking about how to fix those issues that we have. So if you didn't watch the last video, basically the big issues with the tree for most of the community, about just a few different talent nodes, are going to be mostly focused on demonic with cycle of hatred and shattered destiny, focused on momentum and all the constant fell rushing, and then focused on isolated prey and fodder to the flame. Those are kind of the biggest issues right now facing Havoc Demon Hunter. Let's dive into how I think we can improve them. Let's start off with demonic. Demonic's main issues are twofold. The fact that it A, depowers meta, which would thus make the cooldown kind of weak, and B, when combined with Cycle and Shattered Destiny, it leads to a playstyle that really heavily punishes any form of downtime, like significantly more than any other spec in the game. How do we fix it? Well, I think there's two possible ways to deal with it, and neither are really great solutions to the problems we face. Realistically, to get around some of the issues, you need to depower demonic somehow and shift power out of it and into base metamorphosis itself, thus making the cooldown more than just increasing demonic duration and resetting some cooldowns. But by doing this, you run a fine line of increasing the power of demon form, and thus in turn also increasing the power of demonic. Thus, you need to have some kind of damage multiplier on cast of metamorphosis, which would have to be introduced to shift power out of demonic form and more so into meta as a cooldown, thus enabling us to actually have some form of burst with that cooldown. The downtime option is a lot harder to fix, since obviously demonic itself existing is going to just be way more powerful than your base form, which will always incentivize Havoc to maintain as high of uptime as demonic as possible. Cycle and Shattered Destiny are both going to lead to this problem, and it's kind of hard to balance them as such. Some more deterministic cooldown reduction could maybe be added, such as a way to guarantee that I-beam is always 20 seconds, maybe just flat cooldown reduction. That's kind of really boring for a capstone, and I honestly don't see Blizzard ever doing that. I really just don't see that happening. It's really tough to fix the problem with uptime while demonic exists in the first place, and Cycle and Shattered Destiny are always going to lead to it being better, especially with meta as a cooldown. Again, not really doing much outside of just giving you more demon form and resetting I-beam and death sweep. Honestly, and I know this one's going to be kind of a hot take and kind of far-fetched, demonic is iconic for Havoc, but I think it would be kind of healthier for the spec if they tried to see what Havoc would look like without demonic and then deleted it for a patch just to see what it could be. We've been so reliant on demonic for the past 5 to 6 years. I couldn't really see this happening that much, but other classes have had major shakeups in the past, and the current iteration of demonic is causing so many more problems than anything else. I think it could be really interesting and unique to see what a Havoc Demon Hunter without demonic could look like, featuring more focus on metamorphosis and other parts of the kit. So I think that could be a really interesting way of fixing these problems. Otherwise, there's not a ton to do for the uptime stuff. It's just kind of really baked into the tree itself and require a really deep rework of the spec to have those downtime issues fixed. Obviously, we're going to always suffer a little bit, but right now we suffer so much that something needs to happen to it. Momentum. So the thing with momentum is that the ire towards it is often pretty misplaced, honestly. The main problem with it is just how often we have to fel rush, which is less of an issue for momentum and more of an issue with isolated prey. However, that's not to say that momentum doesn't have its issues. I do think the biggest issue with momentum currently is that it's a high uptime, low impact buff. I think momentum works a lot better when it's a lower uptime, higher impact buff. The buff itself is just super small, it's like 8%, which means it doesn't really feel rewarding for us to use it for all the effort and like mental gymnastics and needing to have eyes on every side of your head required for us to put in it. So like the juice isn't worth the squeeze, so to speak. However, momentum does cap an otherwise pretty unique part of Havoc's tree, which is actually progressively makes sense. All the movement talents actually work together, and momentum is kind of a capstone to that, which I do think is something that's lacking on Havoc's tree in general. More on that later. But I don't think removing momentum is actually a great solution. Honestly, I think a better one, in my opinion, honestly, is to move the fel rush tie off of fel rush itself, and of course this is assuming that isolated prey also changes, but to move the fel rush tie into unbound chaos. Now this will require a few things to happen, such as rebalancing momentum to still be a relatively equal power to current form, but should this happen, I would also like to see them revert the nerf to the buff duration of Unbound Chaos, letting you kind of bank it when it's needed, which is something kind of missing. But changing momentum to trigger off of Unbound Chaos instead of just general fel rush would return momentum to more of a lower uptime, higher impact buff. Now the buff would still be relatively high uptime based off of just Vengeful Retreat and the Hunt and having Unbound Chaos every 20 seconds or so, but it wouldn't be the 80 to 90% that it currently is. Having the trigger be on Unbound Chaos would further mean that you can bank this use and have it up during impactful moments, and move it away from just kind of focusing on having momentum up almost as much as possible, which I think would work a lot to having like an improvement of this and making people more acceptive of the momentum playstyle. So here we are with the big kind of demon, I guess, in the room, Isolated Prey. Isolated Prey is problematic for two reasons mainly, the Fury gain and the fact that it only works against one singular target. Let's tackle Fury gain first. The idea that hitting one target netting you extra Fury, or hitting your main target giving you extra Fury on some of your abilities, I don't think is actually much of a problem here. And honestly, if this was reworked to like another ability, say, I don't know, Blade Dance or something, as long as it wasn't Throw Glaive, I think it would be fine. The problem with this is that it comes on top of an ability that has essentially no GCD. It has a GCD that's 0.25 of a regular GCD, which means that it costs nothing to use, which means that we are fel rushing almost on CD to generate Fury. If you're doing something other than fel rushing, if you're using Sigil Flame or Bellbite or something like that to try and generate Fury, then you're mostly doing something wrong. And that's kind of where the playstyle that people don't like comes from, right? Because fel rush is just such an efficient Fury generator that doesn't even really take up a full GCD, it leads to you needing to push it basically on cooldown, which leads to you fel rushing basically on cooldown, which leads to you moving around so significantly, like so much, that people are just not enjoying it at all. And I think a lot of people are like attribute this to momentum. And yeah, I think current momentum has some issues, but I think most of the issues come with Isolated Prey. But I think fixing this and just removing the fel rush trigger would make it way better. Again, you could put it on like Blade Dance or something. There's not a ton of abilities that would make it a lot better. Realistically, like Blade Dance would probably be the best one. You could do it with Throw Glaive, but that would cause some issues as well, where you have to throw Glaive often. But at least if you're throwing the Glaive out, you're not fel rushing. So it'd be a little bit better for people. On top of that, you have to pass down through Isolated Prey to take our best two talents, Know Your Enemy and Essence Break, which means that there are no builds where you don't need to fel rush. So I think changing this would be one of the better things to fix for Havoc Demon Hunter, in all honesty. The other issue with Isolated Prey is just with Fodder, where, you know, you're on a single target boss fight, you expect IP to be up the whole time. Oh no, the demon randomly spawned while you're I-beaming, so now you're doing less damage, now your fel rush won't give you Fury, and all that stuff. Now there's really two ways to fix this. Either have to have Isolated Prey be a 30% damage amp on I-beam for like hitting a primary target, or if like you hit your primary target, then you get all these bonuses. Or you could just remove Fodder the Flame. Fodder isn't honestly like a pretty annoying ability with how it spawns, when it spawns, the fact it evades the first little while as it spawns, and the fact that the soul itself is also RNG where it goes, so it's not very easy to pick up all the time, even if like the demons in front of you and you expect to get it. So all in all, this talent just kind of sucks, especially in conjunction with Isolated Prey. And I think it should look into being fixed or being removed, as well as Isolated Prey. I think that's kind of one of the biggest issues on the current Havoc Demon Hunter talent tree. With the fixes to some of the biggest issues to the tree out of the way, let's talk about some ways we can add things and improve sections, with maybe some older talents potentially making a return. And I will say, I'm just shooting some ideas out here. I'm not a game designer in any way. In fact, I dig up rocks and look at dead things for a living. So some of these things are probably pretty busted and not balanced, and we need to be rebalanced. But I think I would be remiss if I did a whole video about fixing up the talent tree and didn't mention these, so let's get into it. So first, I gotta mention Chaos Blades. For those of you who haven't been playing Havoc for the longest time, Chaos Blades is one of our old cooldowns which we used to have, which was removed in Battle for Azeroth. The other being Nemesis, which was removed in Shadowlands. Now I think the old version of Chaos Blades was actually pretty cool, increasing all the damage you did for 12 seconds based on your mastery, which increased its damage and was later changed to just flat 30%, and also caused your auto attacks to do 150% more damage and also be converted to chaos, thus also making them scale with mastery. I think this would actually be like absolutely sick to bring back, as unlike Nemesis, which is kind of boring and looked like this, it actually somewhat interacted with our own kit, being mastery. This would be a fun inclusion towards the bottom of the tree to pick up for a single target damage boost, or even for some burst AoE, although the single target portion is much more noticeable, but 30% free damage is nothing to scoff at. If they wanted to, this could even be tied into meta to really give that cooldown an actual burst part to it, which really worked towards making meta feel impactful again. Moving on from there, I think a big thing missing from our tree in general, aside from like the immolation aura and movement-based parts of the tree, is that a lot of talents, especially towards the bottom, are just kind of randomly thrown there. There's not really anything that synergizes together. They all just flow into each other with not really a lot of rhyme or reason. Like, there's some small synergies, I'll give them that. Like, the middle branch is loosely centered around demon form, kinda, with talents about entering and leaving demon form, as well as extending demonic, which doesn't really work well with entering or leaving, but then you also have stuff that gives you more demonic. So there's like a loose theme there. Oh, also just getting haste from I-beam. So a bit of a loose theme at least, but like, what do the other two branches have to do with anything? How do momentum, chaos theory, know your enemy, and essence break relate together at all? How does the other side relate together? Like, there's like two glaive talents, but then there's any means necessary, which doesn't really interact with the glaive stuff, but is sort of interacting with the immolation aura stuff, but doesn't actually interact with Ragefire because Ragefire doesn't benefit from it. I guess there's like a mastery thing there because Soul Rend is chaos damage now, and any means necessary means you want to do more mastery, but how do they don't really relate together. Like, some of the stuff just doesn't really make sense. I think looking at some other trees, we could honestly do a lot better. Havoc's tree just feels like it was an older tree. It's pretty restrictive with its overabundance of 2-point nodes. It doesn't really have cohesive talents that build off each other like other challenge trees do. Like, look at things like the Warlock trees, the Mage trees, the Druid trees, even some Hunter trees, where they have talents that progressively flow into each other and build up on some abilities or some different aspects. And the tree isn't even that connective. In fact, after this row here, you're actually locked in and can no longer cross over to other parts of the tree. So you're basically stuck in a certain section after basically one of your really early talent selections. So I think before we get into what stuff could be brought back, I think restructuring the tree in general would be pretty sick and give a lot more options to different builds. Speaking of other capstones, I think there are definitely some older options we can incorporate into the tree to bring about some different builds. One such is going to be Fell Bombardment. Now, Fell Bombardment was a Shadowlands legendary, which we actually were able to use with the current talent trees in the pre-patch, which is kind of sick, which gave your immolation aura damage a chance to give you a stack of the aforementioned Fell Bombardment, and each stack would increase the damage your throw glaive deals to the primary target and would also throw an additional glaive at a nearby target. This would cause a ton of glaive damage, including a lot of priority damage to the main target, and lots of glaives just kind of being chucked around everywhere, getting a lot of soul rend damage as well. In fact, actually in early beta builds of the Havoc talent tree, Fellbomb was actually there. They then removed it, but it was there. I honestly think Fell Bombardment would be a cool and fun way to cap off a glaive build, allowing for some pretty strong single target damage, as well as the ability to do a ton of AoE damage with your glaives, really amping up glaive builds, which honestly have kind of fallen behind recently and do need a little bit of love. Another interesting thing which could work as a way to deal some more AoE damage would be to add a node beneath the Glaive Tempest Fel Barrage node, which buffed either option, similar to how there's a buff below Incarn and Convoke that work for both in Druid trees. A pretty cool Glaive Tempest buff would be including the old trait Rage of the Illidari, which caused Glaive Tempest to explode for a portion of damage done again, dealing it, or splitting it, amongst nearby enemies. Now, in terms of Fel Barrage node, I honestly think Fel Barrage would need to be removed or reverted to an older state. For those of you out of the loop, current Fel Barrage is a 3-second channel, which deals more ticks per haste you have. That really is just bad and has no reason to ever be taken over Glaive Tempest. Old Fel Barrage had 2 different flavors depending on when you played. One similar to the current system, which had a chance to reduce its CD by 5 seconds when you used abilities, which was around in BFA. And the other was a charge-based system, which dealt more damage per charge consumed, up to 5, and charges were recovered over time, and also had a chance to be generated when you used your abilities. This one was also pretty fond of. Both of them were used, but really Fel Barrage is just so anti-synergy to our kit now, since you want to use it during meta for the haste bonus, but it doesn't actually help reduce or extend meta uptime. Fel Barrage right now just doesn't make a ton of sense, and I think returning it to its old form and giving it a node that would maybe reduce its CD or give you like a mini haste buff upon using it, thus allowing you to use it outside of Demonic, would maybe go further into making it useful. But honestly, Fel Barrage, it needs something hard. Either remove it or rework it or add something to it, because right now just there's no reason to ever touch that talent. Another fun node I think would be great to see, potentially giving us some more AoE damage, would be some form of a rebalance around Radon's Cascading Eyes. This was a Legion legendary that reduced the cooldown of I-Beam by 0.3 seconds each time it dealt critical damage, which back in the day would be a full reduction when fighting around 10 or so targets. Today you would need around 13 to 14. This allowed you to just kind of chain spam I-Beam, which is probably too strong, but I think some rebalance form of this could be pretty interesting for AoE I-Beam reduction. Speaking of AoE I-Beams, I would be remiss to not mention Anguish the Deceiver as well. Anguish was an old artifact trait which applied a debuff each time I-Beam dealt damage, which then exploded. This could be an alternate way of applying some more AoE damage, albeit less exciting. Now, to note, if you include Radons, you can't include this, because these together would be way too much. You just chain I-Beam damage, stacking up a bunch of dots, and then just blow them all up for insane amounts of DPS, which couldn't really be allowed to exist currently. I think some things can be further done to improve Blade Dance as well. I think it's just a really weak AoE button, and I think adding a choice node of Balanced Blades, which is an old ability that increased your Blade Dance damage for each mob nearby, against some kind of single target node, maybe First Blood or a separate choice, and keeping First Blood could be pretty interesting in allowing you to tailor your toolkit either more towards AoE damage or more towards single target damage. Now, I'm not sure if putting this against First Blood would be good, or putting a different node somewhere else that made it more single target damage or more AoE, and keeping First Blood where it is. First Blood kind of fills in that single target niche already, but I worry that if you get rid of First Blood, you're just not going to push Blade Dance and single target again. So I think keeping First Blood and putting this node somewhere else would be the best way to go. Finally, I want to talk about Covenant legendaries. Again, for those who weren't around during Shadowlands, Covenants were 4 factions that each gave a special ability to your class, and 3 of those were actually represented in the talent tree, being the Hunt, Art of the Flame, and Elysian Decree. Now, thankfully, the 4th one, Sinful Brand, isn't in our tree, and I don't think it ever should be, but I think more can be done with each one. For the Hunt, there's a pretty useless talent directly below it, Relentless Pursuit. And honestly, Relentless Pursuit is pretty useless. The use case for it is just so super narrow and really goes against what you want to be doing with the Hunt. Instead, I think putting something like Blazing Slaughter, Night's Phase Covenant Legendary, in that slot would work great as an AoE option. Blazing Slaughter causes the Hunt to trigger Immolation Aura, having synergy with the right side of our tree, while also granting 4% agility for 12 seconds per each target you hit with it, which would cap at 20% due to the 5 target cap of the Hunt. This Immolation Aura would work exactly like a normal one would, triggering things like Unbound Chaos, as well as Ragefire and the corresponding talents. This would work well to give a powerful AoE option against the more single target to low target count Unnatural Balance node on the bottom of that tree. In terms of the other 2 Covenant abilities, I think having a node below them that gives their legendary power could be quite interesting as well. Obviously, these legendary powers are not quite as powerful as some of the options, so some change could be needed. For reference, the Necrolord legendary caused the demon to inflict Fiery Brand to 5 targets for 5 seconds, and also increased the soul duration by 8 seconds, while the Kyrian legendary gave 2 more soul shards when you used it, and caused each soul shard you pick up in the next 20 seconds to give you 10 fury, and 1% verse, stacking up to 20%. These legendaries were never really used as Havoc in Shadowlands. I guess the Fodder one was slightly, but it was never because you were using the Fiery Brand spread or whatever. But they could be interesting ideas to amp up the power of these abilities, which in general are kind of just a boring 1-point node, and it could make an interesting choice to put another node below it. Of course, there are other ideas that could work as well, but these are just the best ones I was able to come up with. And that is going to be it for this video. So let me know down below, what do you want to see added or changed? How would you fix Havoc Demon Hunter? That's going to be it for today, but I want to thank you all for sticking around and watching. If you enjoyed the video, drop a like and consider hitting the subscribe button. I'm pushing for 10,000 subs by the end of the year, so if you enjoyed it, please consider doing that. If you really enjoyed it, consider becoming a channel member to help me make bigger and better videos. There's a link down in the description below. As a channel member, you get access to tons of cool perks, such as an exclusive part of the Discord, VOD review, exclusive emotes for comments and YouTube live streams, exclusive videos, and you just kind of get to help me make bigger and better videos. Also, I'll be streaming more on Twitch in the coming weeks, so go to the description, join my Twitch there, follow it, whatever, and there's a link for my Discord as well. So that is it. Hopefully Havoc Demon Hunter comes through with some pretty big changes, either in 10.1.7, which is doubtful, or 10.2, and of course I'll be covering them when it does. So thanks everybody for watching. Hopefully Havoc sees some changes, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.